Paul, thanks very much for joining me and sharing your experience on continuous improvement and lean. I'm sure that there's going to be plenty of scope to incorporate new ways of working in what people are badging up as a new world. Now we're sort of getting towards this sort of post-COVID era. So thank you very much for joining in this lockdown series with us.
No problem.
So to kick things off, if you can just give us a brief explanation of the benefits of lean and CI principles, that'd be really valuable.
Yeah, I mean, the fundamental thing about any kind of continuous improvement is always going to be around business objectives. So a lot of the people that I work for, it's really around something in their business isn't working or achieving the targets that they want it to achieve. It can be customer satisfaction, for instance. You can get called in because you're getting a lot of customer complaints. Good thing about customer complaint data is generally there's quite a lot of it there, so you've got something to go on. It could be like you're not achieving on-time delivery. You know, if you think about the COVID situation, for instance, the pressure on the logistics arms of the supermarkets must have been absolutely immense. It could be that they're just not making enough profit. And part of it is also regulatory, particularly when you work in the banking industry. They've become much more heavily regulated over the last few years because of the issues around, you know, historically things like the Enron scandal and all of those kind of things. So there's lots of reasons why businesses call people like myself in to help them to improve their processes. And really, any activity you do around lean, CI, you can badge it up how you want, but it's all about process improvement. It's about understanding what the client wants. And it's about delivering on that objective. So if the client wants you to come in and look at reducing their level of customer complaints, that's what we focus on. There might be other byproducts on that in terms of how quickly you can process those complaints and looking at the root causes of those complaints and what's actually driving those complaints to happen. So what you tend to do is you tend to focus on the initial objective, but then always speak to clients around, okay, I've noticed a real pattern here in terms of your customer complaints, which is manifesting itself in this part of the process. So what you then do is go and fix part of the process, which means you don't get complaints anymore. What I tend to not do is use the kind of terminology like lean or Six Sigma and all those kind of buzzwords because nobody's interested and you start to lose people's attention. What you're really there to do is to solve problems, fix processes and make processes more efficient and reduce ability. That's really, so I very, very rarely use those kind of lean, CI, Six Sigma terminologies when I'm speaking to the people who are actually doing the work. I'm with you. I think a lot of if you like processes and ways of working that have got a defined badge, you tend to find that if it's introduced with that badge on it, it can sometimes sort of put people off. Because I'm just a big believer in if you've got a toolkit, you just kind of you get the right thing out, don't you, for the right sort of circumstance, really. So what you want to do, Simon, is you don't just think about one way of doing things. What you always have to do is what suits that situation. So it might be a little bit of a lean tool here. It could be another tool here. It just all depends on the situation. If you just badge something as one approach, then you tend to funnel yourself into one way of working. I don't think it's about that. It's about finding something that works to solve a problem. So this leads me on actually to thinking about certain circumstances. So will there be sort of, you know, circumstances that will need to be in place in order to benefit from sort of introducing the elements of lean and CI, and you know, can it be broken down into sort of components to tailor itself then to different situations? I think for me, always the circumstance that's always necessary when you're doing any kind of CI is something that we always use is that kind of that compelling need. It's always a reason as to, well, why am I doing this? Why do I need to change that process? Why do I need to improve? And fundamentally, when you're speaking to people who do this work on a day-to-day basis, that's what they want to know. They
Yeah.
want, well, why do I need, I've been working here 30 years, and and the classic phrase is, we've always done it this way. Why do we change? So I always find being able to express to people a real need as to why you need to change that process. And it might be, we want to take, so if you're talking to somebody, for instance, and you're saying, we want to take 25 seconds out of a 7-minute process, they don't understand, well, why bother taking 25 seconds out of a 7-minute process but when you're doing 100,000 of those activities a year, then it starts to become an awful lot of time. And getting that message out, 25 seconds is one thing that we can do. There'll be another 50 things that we can do that actually roll that up into taking 4 minutes out of a 7-minute process. And what that means is that you've freed up all that capacity within that process to be able to serve customer requirements much quicker, but also do more with the resource that you've got. So I always say being able to express that compelling need for change, or we often use this term burning platform, is to, somebody always said to me, it's that, why bother? You've got to answer that, well, why bother? And if you can answer that why bother question, then that's the kind of circumstance that you want to generate. I also think having a very supportive senior management within any company that you work with who want you there and will back you in terms of what you want to do is also that's really important, because sometimes you're telling senior managers things that they might not want to hear, telling them the actual truth about what's going on in their organisation. And I think sometimes that can be hard for people to listen to. But you've got to have the courage of your convictions. At the end of the day, you're there because the client wants to solve this problem and they want to hear actually what's going on. And I think ultimately the other circumstance is to have a clear objective as to what you're going to achieve at the end of it. So you can't just go in with a generic, I want to improve this by 10%. It's, exactly what are you going to change, and ultimately what are you going to deliver at the end of that review.
So would you say then there are sort of certain methods and working practices then that Lean and CI can sort of dovetail better into, or is it kind of, does it not really matter?
For me personally, it's never really mattered. I don't think there's any situation where you'd say Lean sits that way, Six Sigma sits that way, CI sits that way. I mean, fundamentally, they have particular outcomes that they're looking for. So Lean is driven by time. Generally, Lean will be around reducing the time it takes to do an activity and take waste out of processes. So things like defects, when you have a defect in a process, when you have waiting time, when you have delays while you're waiting for somebody to sign off a document, all of those kind of things. That's what Lean is trying to do. It's trying to identify the real added value of a process. What's the thing that you're doing that the customer is prepared to pay for and adds value to the goods or the services that you're providing, and you're trying to eliminate everything else that doesn't add value to that process. And that's about waste removal. So Lean is very much around time and waste removal, and reducing the time it takes to do an activity and removing those wastes and rework activities and those kind of things. Six Sigma is very much about looking at how variable a process is, and then it's more of a focus on right first time quality, about delivering something right first time. It's not so much interested in time, but when you're doing activity that's right first time activity, if you can remove rework adds time into a process. So you get a byproduct of Lean benefit when you're doing those kind of Six Sigma activities. And then the other one, things like CI and operational excellence, are really around constantly challenging what you do within your processes to have that iterative loop that goes round, which is just, I've improved it now. Can I go back and improve it again? Can I go back and improve?
Fantastic. And that's something that we're going to cover in the second part of this conversation, really honing in on the true benefits of what Lean and CI can add to an organisation. So for now, we'll conclude part one, and then we'll pick part two back up, and we'll see you back soon.